Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What's up, Kevin? How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Kind of blown back by this headline I just saw that N'Keal Harry is going to try playing at tight end.
He's built for it, I guess. Whose team is he on? Do you know?
Tough, man.
Anyone know?
That's a
is
tough
he on a team?
Transition to make it. The Vikings, it looks like.
Wow.
Good for him. The Phoenix Suns have done some stuff in the last week or two, and we're going to basically, this is like slop cleanup, where we've just got a couple of loose parts around. We've been putting off cleaning for a couple of days, and it's getting kind of, not gross, but just okay, if I let this continue for another week, then it's going to get gross around here.
Too much.
That isn't like a cute metaphor to say what the Suns are doing are gross or anything, but it's just we have a couple of loose parts to clean up around here. One of them including a second-round draft prospect that is grabbing a lot of headlines, and we're going to keep talking about on the air, apparently. I had to endure that for 4 days. Didn't really enjoy that too much. But I got through it, and we'll get through it on this podcast today. What I'm referring to is mainly draft workouts and then also assistant coaches being added. The Suns and Mike Budenholzer now have nearly a full staff, I would say. When you're talking about the main assistants on the team, you're talking
first
about...
row bench. Good.
Yeah, first row bench guys. There you go. You're on it. Vince LaGarza comes in. He worked with Budenholzer in Atlanta and Milwaukee. Chad Forcier comes in. He was most recently in Utah. Gerald retweeted a tweet from him that was... It was video of Barkley scoring 50-something points against Seattle in 93, and Forcier, I think, had some nostalgia or attachment to that, apparently, with the way he tweeted it. He didn't really provide the context, but I guess he's like Budenholzer in some ways and has some Suns attachments there. And David Fizdale is back. The Suns were like, hey, you should work in the front office, and it seems like he was like, no, I won't do that. You guys paid me all this money, so... No. And now he's back being an assistant coach. That was in a report from The Athletic, Shams Charania, that said that they plan to offer him a front office role to retain him, and that added later that Fizdale might not take that offer. And so now he's back on the staff. Fizdale is the most notable guy here to mention. One more is Chason Allen, who was the head coach of the Wisconsin Herd, who were the G League affiliate for the Milwaukee Bucks, where Mike Budenholzer used to coach as well.
Darvin Ham was a no also.
And then Darvin Ham joined the committee of saying no to the Suns. The Herd featured players such as Phoenix product Ty Washington Jr. and Gonzaga standout Drew Timme. How about that? Well, Drew Timme.
Where'd Ty go to high
you
school?
You want to play Making Five, bud? There's Drew Timme.
I forgot where he went to high school. I'm sorry, Ty.
I'm not induced in the scene. We'll have Damon Allred on next week, by the way. You and I are going to do our cramming of the draft, which has become a tradition now, where in 2 weeks' time, we completely cram. We've done it every year at this point. We did it last year when they only had a second-round pick, and then the year before that, I believe, is when they didn't even have a pick at all. And we were just like, oh, well, it makes sense. If there's ever a time to buy a pick, this is one. So then we turned it into this whole thing. They actually have a pick this year, so we'll have plenty to talk about there. But any takeaways from the assistant coaches, Kevin? Because my only one really is that Fizdale is back, which must mean that the players were big on Fizdale and enjoyed him being around.
Yeah, that was the big one for me. It's familiarity. I think he's the definition of a player's coach, the guy who can be honest with people, be hard on people. And I always fight on this. I think there's good value in bringing someone back from the prior staff where they have familiarity. They know the touch points of don't ask this player that. They don't react well, or they do react well to this. That knowledge base, I think is really good for a new staff for the most part to come in and fit in, just so Bud knows what he's working with the players especially. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of connections to Bud. Even going to the Darvin Ham thing, like obviously they were coaching together for a very long time, going back to 2013. So I understand why he didn't want it. It's good to have a mental break, I think, in these jobs. But for what the Suns do have, yeah, nothing big there.
Yeah, that was a big thing with Cliff when he left the Cardinals, right? It was like, brother,
Thailand.
Go get on a beach somewhere. And he was like, brother, I'm going on the beach. And then he spent 2 months away from football. And those football guys, they just crave their football. They can't go too long without their football. The Suns went really long without a G League team. We should briefly bring this up. The Valley Suns is their name. They are going to play at Mullet Arena in Tempe. That is going to be a cool deal for both you and I.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be certain days around the office here where we're like, well, shucks, so-and-so is playing down there in Tempe. We got nothing else going on. Let's go take a look down there. That's really accessible for us. I think previously we were in a different point in our coverage 5 years ago for sure. But if we wanted to go see someone, it's like we couldn't pitch driving up to Prescott Valley for 2 hours to go see someone. But now it's a 20-minute, 25-minute drive from where we are currently, where our offices are. That's where we'll get into, is Bronny James going to be a Valley Sun talk? But any takeaways from the announcement, just for context, we expected this. We knew that there was a G League franchise that was going to start up. We just didn't know where they were going to play and what they were going to be called. And we got that information last week.
I'm no PR branding guy, but Valley Suns, we want to encapsulate more than Phoenix. Sure, great. Not the most exciting name, but I was honestly anticipating like just an off-the-wall thing for some reason. They didn't do that.
The Tempe Cyclones.
Yeah, just like I don't get it. The Suns have obviously power here in this state. I was pleasantly surprised by the Mullet situation. Obviously, a certain hockey team being there might have gotten in the way, whether that's a minor league or a professional hockey league. I don't know if that would have mattered at all, but it's cool that the Suns get that opportunity because obviously, again, location, it makes it really easy to what you wrote about. Just like the shuttling back and forth, even between Tempe and Phoenix, is important for the players who play. Like, there's
no traffic. It's like 15 minutes from the facility to Mullet, and then even with traffic, it's a half an hour. It's right there.
When they would ship guys up and down, even when they're in Prescott Valley, it's like I don't think you can fly easily unless you're on a private plane. You're busing for an hour and a half at least, 2 hours in traffic. Just doesn't make sense. And this is just convenient. They're actually going to use it, which is cool. One of the crazy things about like James Jones's tenure is he did his best job of selling like, oh, we don't need a G League team. We're concerned about the 13 players here, the 12 players here. We have technology now to scout, and like he made the best out of a bad situation where it was his prior owner who made the decision to sell that team, and then the Suns ended up being the last team to not have a G League affiliate. But now it looks like they're full bore, like, hey, we need to get our guys like Saban Lee run. We need to go test things in whether it's just plays, actions. Like there's so many things at different levels, training staff stuff even maybe, that you can do at that level. And I think it being close by is only going to help you navigate. Does it work? Can we apply it to the NBA squad? Can we shuttle guys in between? That kind of stuff.
If Book sprains his ankle, you've got a fresh group of bodies that he can go work out with and get even more work in with if he wants to. Guys can even go down there and like play a quick game if they want to, if they just want to get run in that kind of way. It's going to be really beneficial. The location thing is something I want to spotlight. I did this in the piece. So there are 30 G League affiliates now. More than half of them are either in another state or they're at least an hour away from their NBA arena. Like the difference between the NBA arena and the G League arena is at least an hour away. So this is not an incredibly common thing. It was something that Josh Bartelstein said they studied. They were like, okay, for the teams that are this far away, how often are they making G League roster moves? And they found that it was a detriment to them. And that goes back to his experience in Detroit because he was actually part of the collective that bought the NAZ Suns from the Suns back then. We've talked at length over the years about how stupid that decision was by the Suns and how cheap it was and how just like disgusting is a really aggressive word, but it was just kind of insulting in some ways to their fans. Like, no, we're not going to utilize every single mechanism possible to develop talent for our team because it costs a little bit more money to do it.
And yeah, that's the thing too. It was like, I don't have exact numbers. I never looked at it in depth, but from what I understood, it wasn't even that much money.
Matt Ishbia came in and immediately said it was something he was going to get done. He did get it done. And you can scoff at the G League for what it is, but I named the players in here. Danny Green, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet are guys that went in either the second round or undrafted and were identified immediately in the G League. And those teams, Toronto mainly, were like, oh, we have a player on our hands. Let's get them up. Would they have found that out if he would have sat 14th on the depth chart and just not played in practice? Probably not. Isaiah Hartenstein and Derek Jones Jr. were two high-level talents. Hartenstein, a guy who might have gone top 20 in his draft, had the pre-draft process worked out for him as well as it did. And they bounced around there for a couple of years. Hartenstein had a couple of legitimate seasons there where he was playing full games. And now you look at both those guys on really good teams contributing. You can go through other teams that have won. Gabe Vincent on the Miami Heat. He was their starting point guard in the finals. Gary Payton was a key role player for them over there. You can just go on and on about the importance of there. Damian Lee spent some time down there over the course of his career and figured it out. So the bottom line on the G League specifically is that it is an asset and you need to be using it.
Do you remember when Jalen Smith got relegated to the G League and had to fly to was that the bubble? I don't even know. Anyway, my point was that was embarrassing and also pointless. They needed the rookie lottery pick to get run and had to send him on a plane somewhere. Not great. Anyway, Bronny James stuff?
Yeah, Shams Charania reported 2 weeks ago, that the Suns are among the teams that are going to work out Bronny James. It was later clarified that he is being selective with his workouts. I get that people are reacting a certain way to this, and this is one of those things where it's happening with Caitlin Clark discourse right now, where you're not in that field, and then all of a sudden you're getting yourself in this field and reacting a certain way when context-wise you don't really know a ton of what's going on here. And this agenting stuff with not only leaking when you're working out and who you're working out with, but also dictating which workouts you do and which teams you don't work out for happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens with guys you've never heard of. He's not just doing this because he's Bronny James and Rich Paul is his agent.
Yeah.
This happens with those guys all the time. Lou Dort is a classic example of a guy who pretty much forced his way into being undrafted so he could sign a two-way with the Thunder. That worked out very well for him. It was a really good decision, but that's just one of the classic examples that I think of because he's a guy that people bring up why didn't teams draft him? It's well, they didn't draft him because he wasn't going to go there. He said he wasn't going to go there, and that's kind of how it worked. That is not stuff that has been widely reported, by the way, but it was just Lou was a late first-round pick thought of mainly, and then he slipped all the way to being undrafted. You can put 2 and 2 together there. With Bronny specifically, this is grabbing a lot of headlines because of the LeBron attachment. I think that you and I can just not breeze right past that and say, you and I both don't see a world where he takes $47 million less. You know what's really rad when you're a billionaire is having $50 million more dollars.
Yeah.
That's really cool. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I have any insight at all into how LeBron James views his financials, nor will you, nor will anyone who has spoken into a microphone about this in the last 2 weeks, because the only guy that knows that is LeBron himself, and he hasn't spoken on it at all. There's the link from 3 years ago, where he said his goal is to play with his kid. He didn't retract fully, but he backstepped a bit lately. So there was this thought for years, if you drafted Bronny James, you were going to get LeBron James in free agency. It was something that was talked about for years. Now the Suns are attached to it. Here we are. I think the bigger concern here for Suns fans is using the 22nd overall pick on a prospect like Bronny James, who, in my opinion, is a legitimate NBA prospect, but is a legitimate NBA prospect where he's drafted in the 40s or the 50s. Mm-hmm. Lou Dort was a legitimate NBA prospect, but he went undrafted. That happens all the time. Vince Williams was a guy who you and I talked about before the 23 draft, I think 22, as a legitimate NBA prospect who was ranked in the 90s, went undrafted. It happens, and those guys are still legitimate. So it's easy for me to as the person driving this to be what's going on here, Kevin? Is there something funny at play? But you just did a story today on a few of the guys that the Suns have worked out who are in the second round range as well. Yeah. It appears to be the Suns doing due diligence, and if you have an opportunity to work out Bronny James, you should, because you should work out everyone in the ranges where you think you could wind up, because one of the paths the Suns can take, that was tough, that will get to here in a second is they can trade down and they can get multiple picks, which would be a really good idea.
Yeah, Thank you, Kellen. I have not seen many trade down discussions. I'm sorry if I don't read your other Suns articles, people out there who write them. By the way, we're going to get into it and go hard at this the next 20. Is it really 22 days until the 22nd pick is made, possibly by the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, so technically if I'm doing the story today, it's June 4th. Up until the day before the draft, I'll have a story every day for the 22 days leading up to the 22nd pick. And we'll explore 22 different angles. So I'll break down Tyler Kolek for a whole day. I'll break down trading down for a whole day. I'll break down trading Nas Little in 22nd pick. I'll break down the history of trading unprotected first round picks and if it backfires or not with like the 2031 pick. There's a lot of different ways to go.
Cool. So we'll get into that. Where was I going with this? I don't remember.
You're just saying we're going to talk about prospects more in depth. Like Damon is someone who has watched more Bronny James than both of us combined. We'll ask him about Bronny next week. Did pass the Aaron Holiday test for me, Kev. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I saw him in Pac-12 play, and I was like, that looks like an NBA player to me. And people will be like, he averaged 4 points. Peyton Watson averaged like 2. And he's a good NBA player right now. Like it happens all the time. Highly regarded 5-star, 4-star prospects have a trash freshman year. They declare anyway, and then they turn out to be solid NBA players. It happens all the time.
Yeah. I was going to say, though, one, it's a good point bringing up the trade down scenario because also when you look at the names that are starting to pop up about who the Suns are looking at, and this is for every team, you're looking at first round down to undrafted guys. They're going to look at tons of guys who will not go drafted, I bet. And for the sake of even if they stand pat or they trade away that pick, like there's been discussion from Rich Paul, Bronny James's agent, if they do not like what's going on. Like he basically spoke like into the I'm going to do what Lou Dort did and navigate where I want to go. Tell people not to draft me all the way through the second round if that's the case. Yeah. If I don't get the guaranteed contract I want. And
42 Charlotte, leave me alone.
Yeah. And I'll renegotiate, circle back with teams as a free agent basically, and you're in control after the second round is over on that Thursday night. So if you're the Suns, I think there is even value in like, okay, Bronny James is going to fall and their agent likes apparently what you're doing to at least give you a workout and thinks that you're not messing around with this and trying to get his dad. If he's giving you that workout, that means he views you in good light. That means that it doesn't matter what happens with LeBron James. If Bronny goes there, it will be a good situation. He will learn from Kevin Durant. He will learn from Devin Booker. Obviously, if you're the Suns, you need to use your draft picks on guys. I think you agree that can help you this year, and that's not Bronny James. But if he's sitting there and they have money, which Matt Ishbia has shown he will spend money, like there's no reason you wouldn't consider signing him undrafted. So that's all to say. I think it's good to work him out for the sake of taking him. He fits the Suns as a player. He's smart. I think he's a few years away from even being like a contributing role player in the NBA, but it doesn't hurt, I guess, is where I'm going with this.
You want to play a game really quick?
Yeah.
Jeremy, which one's the camera? Is it that one? The one above to your right? You're so excited that I'm queuing up to a camera thing right now. The way that you just like fidgeted so quickly to the camera. Imagine me saying
Look into the camera, please.
Imagine me saying this sentence 12 months ago. Are you ready?
Okay.
The Phoenix Suns would have been in a legitimate position to draft Bronny James had they not tampered in free agency for Drew Eubanks. Imagine that 12 months ago. Me saying that sentence out loud. That is a thing that has happened. As a legitimate sentence. I like thinking of like, has anyone said this sentence out loud before? And
never
imagine
on Earth.
12 months ago.
Never on Earth again will anyone say that. Congrats.
Trading down. It's an easy thing to say, Mr. Zimmerman. It's a very easy thing to be like, oh, they can just trade down. Utah has 29 and 32. The Bucks have 23 and 33. Like, would they give up 33 just to move up a spot? Probably not. That's more of an NFL draft kind of thing. New York has 24, 25, and 38. So, like, 25 and 38 maybe if they want to go to 22. Utah's a good one there at 29 and 32. There's Portland, who has 34 and 40. Indiana's kind of whether they have 36, 49, and 50. Like, would you really pick 3 players in the second round? I don't really know. But there are a couple of those specifically. Minnesota is another one where they're at 27 and 37. So there are, and again, you could just trade down from 22 to 30 with Boston. And Boston is like, we love Tyler Kolek. We need Tyler Kolek in our life. And you can be like, okay, give me 30 and 2 future seconds. And like the price being 2 future seconds in the back of their head, they're like, fine. You'd probably want to do it with a team other than Boston. You'd want to do it with a team like Utah at 29, for example, just because, or Washington at 26 because they're bad. Because if you get future seconds from Boston, you're looking at the end of the second round.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't really familiar with the draft, typically what we're taught is that the top 5 is by far where the most equity is for an all-NBA player or an all-star player. There's a dramatic drop-off even from like 3 to 5. Like there's a ton there.
Yeah.
The mid to late lottery, which is 6 to 13, is where you can still find all-star caliber players and players who you believe have all-star upside. Once you get in like the 14 to 25 range, you're talking about more or less the same players where you're looking at guys who project to be really good rotation players. Maybe they have some all-star upside to their own doing as well. And then around like 26 to 40 is like, okay, these guys have chances to be NBA players still and maybe rotation players if everything goes right. But then that's where the drop really, really starts from like 40 on typically. So just keep that in mind if the Suns do wind up doing something where they trade down to like the 40s or the 50s. That's why the Toumani Camara pick, we didn't really talk about it too much last year just because it's so difficult to project guys in that range besides just being like, hey, we like this random guy. Anything else on Bronny or the draft before we go? I mean, the scouting report, which I think no one is talking about, I jokingly did a live draft profile on the air that apparently they're going to use now on like who he is as a player. He's 6'2". He's undersized for a combo guard. He's not a point guard right now. He's not a shooting guard right now. He's sort of a tweener in that kind of way. Shout out to Eric Williams, one of the greatest tweeners of all time. Forget our king and what he did for us at some points in beating Duke. 3-and-D guy is like the pitch here. And I've made the case for 5 years about the value of a point guard who's a 3-and-D guy, the Javon Carter archetype, if you will.
Melton?
If Javon had a little bit more off-dribble stuff. And that's where with Bronny, you get to the way that he approaches defense and just the mentality that he has about being a role player. I liked his answers at the Combine where he was like, I'm like a Derek White, Drew Holiday type. And like how many prospects are legitimately saying that? Remember Desmond Bane had a similar kind of answer? And I was like, ooh, look at you.
He gets it. He gets
self-aware. And then he turned into an all-star guard anyway. But
yeah,
you have to understand where your role is, and he does. He just has to shoot the ball better. His shooting numbers were way down, and that was a problem.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting was not good, honestly, when you look at the numbers and the splits and all that stuff. But that's something I don't worry about a ton with him. But again, it matters as far as immediate impact. And I think I said this to you on the phone over a radio show at some point, possibly on the long weekend. But I kind of consider him a lot. You look at Pelle Larsson with Arizona, who played 4 years in college, transferred once, didn't become a double-digit scorer until he was a senior this past year for Arizona, but everyone kept saying, okay, he has the blueprint of being a pro. He's a good athlete, plays defense, doesn't make dumb decisions, looks for his teammates. You insert him on a team such as the Phoenix Suns where you have a bunch of superstars, he would fit in great. That's what Bronny is like.
What he is supposed to be as an NBA prospect is perfect. It's actually exactly what they need, but
it's not.
Is
there
he
yet.
that guy?
Yeah.
Another bit of context no one talks about when they talk about his stats is that he went through a major medical issue where it looked like he was never going to play basketball again. Some scary heart stuff that happened. I don't have the full context in front of me, but if you're ever going to give a guy a pass for a year, it's going to be that. Hey, guess who read too much into how they played in a terrible situation? It was me with Anthony Edwards. That Georgia team sucked. It was terrible, and it was really bad. And I didn't like the way that he looked or was playing on that team, and it affected the way that I evaluated him. Mm-hmm. And it was a mistake because everyone who knows what they're talking about was like, he's him. He is going to be one of the next rising stars and one of the best players in the league coming up very soon. Everyone saw it. I didn't see it because I read a lot into his situation. I think that's a dangerous thing that you can do with draft. Okay, that's enough actual serious Bronny James talk. We're supposed to be yelling about LeBron and like how it's only a 2-hour flight to LA or whatever. Okay. Finals pick, who you got? It's Dallas and Boston. We have been not spoiled by the series so far. We're hoping as basketball fans this is the one where we get a 6 or 7 game thriller. There have been a couple, mainly the series the Knicks have been in, but other than that, kind of been lacking a bit with the way these series have gone. I think the game quality, like the games have been awesome.
Yeah.
Like Minnesota Dallas had some awesome games, but it was just the
number of like intense both teams playing out of their minds, competing, throwing punches has not necessarily been there. I think Denver, Minnesota even.
Denver, Minnesota was the best series,
but there was still some like
there was
wacky,
a lot of blowouts.
Yeah,
one of the blowouts that was Jokic like punking Gobert on TV, which I thought was awesome.
I think
and
I'm
then
going
on the inverse. I thought it was awesome when Gobert outplayed him in like the Game 7, which is like total Game 7 thing to happen. Who you going?
I think I'm going Dallas in 7. Again, that's hoping for a long series, competitive series.
I have Dallas in 6. Sounds like Porzingis is back.
Yeah, I'm worried. Boston hasn't been tested. I think there's a lot to be said for if you get out of it healthy. Obviously, if you're not worn down. And by the way, they've had like a full week until they play Thursday. Kyrie and Luka look really good. That team doesn't look like it's wearing down. Like Minnesota, you saw some kind of wear down effect. I don't know if that's mental or just like they hit a wall because of scheme or matchups. But that team is deep. They're getting contributions all over the place. They're doing the winning team stuff. Like a couple of the highlights from the last couple games in that series were like Luka diving on the floor and playing defense. And if that's how your superstar who's averaging a freaking triple-double, basically, is he averaging a triple-double? I think it's close for the season. If he's playing that way, then, and you're playing on a string on defense otherwise, I don't know how you stop that team.
Underrated thing not a lot of people have talked about. The week for Porzingis to get healthy, Luka needed to get healthy too. He's been playing through whatever this knee and ankle. He has a litany of things. I remember it was Breen or I think Harlan on the broadcast was like, it's a number of injuries for him.
Yeah,
he just started like
and
having
if that
a new
wear down
injury in the
effect,
game.
but that didn't. He was still playing out of his mind with.
He was still awesome, and we don't know how healthy Porzingis is going to be when he's moving around. And we don't know the likelihood of him just tweaking this in game 2 or 3 and then being out again. Porzingis has been, that was the whole thing with his trade. It wasn't that he wasn't great in Washington. It was like, is he going to play for you in the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals? He did not play for them in the Eastern Conference Finals. They didn't need him.
Yeah.
But they need him in the NBA Finals for sure.
I was reading off box scores, looking just like at minutes allocations, and Boston's thin, man. Like Al Horford played for, I know it was the last elimination game, but Al Horford is 38 playing 40 minutes. Like, if Porzingis can't at least move him to the bench, like they have some of the 4 or 5 of the top players. Like if you go 5 deep, like that's no team can match that talent wise on paper, but their bench is pretty thin. So no offense to Hauser. I can shoot it, but
I've never been a huge fan of Boston's top 2 players, just in terms of on the James Harden scale of when a game gets tight or a series gets tight, how are you responding?
Yeah.
And those 2 guys, specifically Tatum, are evident in that they tighten up.
Yeah.
And it's something that they are far beyond at this point, considering the amount of experience they have. They're one of the most experienced duos in league history in terms of just the amount of playoff games they have together as it is. Mm-hmm. And they're in their mid to late 20s right now as a group.
But you have Derek White and Drew Holiday doing those things for them late in. So yeah, that's why they're that good. Like they have 2 other guys who are going to do the winning things to cover for those guys, regardless of what you think of them.
I just think, again, when I picked Dallas in the last series, if I can get PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr. hitting 35% of their threes, I think Dallas is going to win the series. I think Kyrie specifically is going to have a huge moment in this series. I feel like everything has been building for him to this moment where it's been inconsistent here and there, but I think overall when you watch him, it's the best I've ever seen him play over this postseason run. And I think that everything that's there with him against the Celtics and that his stage specifically, and like I know people are being weird about this being a redemption arc for him, but at least for me it is, because I thought of him as a negative asset at one point, like someone you just wouldn't want on any team, period, just because of how everything had spiraled for him over the last couple of situations. And now he's completely turned it around in those kind of eyes. Like his legacy, he's already secure.
Yeah,
as it is like one of the best players of his generation, but this would just be another step. And he's one of those guys who has always realized it. He hit one of the biggest shots in NBA history with the game winner or the go-ahead bucket against Golden State. And then that's before even getting to Luka, who hasn't even broken 40 yet in the postseason, and he averaged 34 a game in the regular season. So that's coming. Like, I feel like Dallas's best basketball, we haven't even seen it yet because their primary two guys haven't hit quite the heights that we're used to from them. So I think Tatum and Brown are going to have to be able to match them, and I don't think they will.
Right. And look, if we take away the Kyrie bad stuff that's off the court, I think we do like he and KD were playing really good basketball individually before the Nets blew everything up, right? Like Kyrie was having an insane season, so it's not like he, as a basketball player, fell off. He just was like distracted by all this nonsense in several different topics. But like as far as basketball, yeah, I mean they are. Well, what did I say? The two best one-on-one players in the game, no question. You Suns fans probably don't like saying that with Book and KD on this team, but that's what it is right now. So yeah, I have to give them the edge, and I will turn this into a positive Suns point. I think like the season you saw from Grayson Allen, like we don't talk enough about, like, yes, it's Grayson Allen being prepared and ready and improving as a player, but the big three for the Suns opened that up for him, playing with him. And I think Kyrie and Luka kind of do the same exact things for Derrick Jones Jr., who's never going to be an above-average three-point shooter. But when you make it that easy, same thing with PJ Washington. He's gone nuts a couple times just because like the game is just so easy for these role players, even the guys who are coming in and are new. Same thing with Lively and Gafford. So I just think that team, something surprising would have to happen for them to get off kilter. And look, Boston's really good, man. They're going to give them some good defensive looks, I think, and hopefully that's where it will be a really, really competitive, like, entertaining series.
I think it will be. The dynamics I'm looking at specifically before we go, who does Drew guard? Because I think he's supposed to guard Luka, but they might actually put him on Kyrie. Yeah. And then do Tatum and Brown get involved there too? Because I think showing Luka's size is ultimately proven to be, I think the best matchup for him is actually Tatum. For Luka is actually Tatum. Drew to get under him and be annoying and all that kind of stuff, sure. But I actually think Tatum on Luka and then Drew on Kyrie is the best way to go about it, and then have White in the roamer spot. Yeah. So you can take advantage of the help more. I just don't know if Tatum and Brown are going to be able to, as the free safeties playing off of Jones or Washington, are going to be able to do as much. But then on the other side, I think that's the thing, is like, is Washington going to be able to really, like, his defensive rise, is he going to be able to step it up there? But I'm really excited. I think that there's a real case, by the way, that Dallas has the better functioning bigs in this series. I'll put it that way. Like, what they get out of their bigs is actually what they get more out of them than what Boston gets out of Porzingis and Horford. Like, I'm not saying they're better players. I think Porzingis is the best big in this series, but with that being said, like, they get 100th percentile.
They shoot 100% sometimes. Yeah. I mean, their job is just easy. You simplify the game for them because it's either that. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you're going to have to sell out to some degree to stop Luka and Kyrie, and you shouldn't not sell out. I don't think you should play them one-on-one for very long stretches at all. So then you're dealing with empty side stuff, rim rollers that are open. I don't know. I just think that team's tough to stop. Yeah.
All right, man. We're back next week to talk
full board draft. Thank you for the second apron rule gods, whoever made those rules, because if the Suns end up trading their number 22 pick, then at least, like, we had all this discussion time for no reason, but at least we pretended and genuinely thought they would pick. So instead of them trading it for Landry Shamet, like right now, is what I'm trying to say, because they did that once and I was like, we don't have to talk about the draft. Do you remember that? Yeah. I like talking about the draft. Anyway, that's me complaining.
Oh, no, yeah. I came back from the finals completely exhausted after a really long playoff run and just went nuts for a week on draft stuff, and it didn't matter at all.
Now you can go for a month is what I'm saying. And
yeah, I'll do it for 3. I'll do it for 3 weeks instead, man. I'll triple that. I don't care. I'm reckless all the time. Ask anyone who knows me. You know. Jeremy knows. Right, Jeremy? All right, everyone. See you later.